If you've been arrested for DWI in Austin, you're facing up to a year in jail, even if it's your first offense and even if you have no other criminal history. My name's Trey Porter. My law firm handles DWI cases in Austin. DWI cases are complex and there are a lot of moving parts associated with them. This video is going to cover everything from start to finish about what you should do after a DWI arrest in Austin. You're going to be taken into custody. I mean, that happens to everybody. And it's just like what you see on TV. They're going to take you in, you're going to be processed, they're going to take your property, you're going to have to give your fingerprint, they're going to take your photo. And then after that, you're going to appear before a magistrate judge. Now, you can waive magistration in Austin. That's a thing that they do in Travis County that they don't do in all counties in Texas. But you can waive that magistration. Whether you waive it or not, a judge is going to set a bond amount and any conditions associated with your bond. Those are things like drug testing, counseling, classes, ignition interlock, that thing you put in your car that you have to blow into. That's one of the most common ones. And it happens even on first-time offenses, so just keep that in mind. But after that process takes place, then you can either put up a cash bond, you can call a bail bondsman, or it's very common to get a PR bond in Austin. And whichever bond you do, the bond is what gets you out. And so once that is processed, then you know your conditions, and you'll typically know a court date and you're released. There are four main things to do after you're released from jail for DWI in Austin. Number one is your property. Where's my stuff? They should give you your personal items back when you're released, but your vehicle obviously has been towed and impounded. So that's number one, find your stuff and get it back. Number two is identify any conditions that you have. And you may not have any conditions, but if you have a condition where you need to report somewhere at a later date or where you need to go get something installed into your vehicle, you need to be mindful of those because they are conditions of your release. So if you don't follow through with those conditions, they can take you back into custody by issuing a warrant. So that's important. That's number two, identify conditions. Number three is identify your court date. You're going to have a court date and your case isn't going to be resolved or figured out, so to speak, on that court date, but you got to be there. That's the most important thing. You have to be there and you have to be on time. And then the fourth and most important thing to do after you're released is start looking for an experienced attorney. DWIs are complex and the consequences are severe, and you need somebody to stand up for you that knows how to handle these things. Not just the deadlines and the paperwork and answers to basic questions, but also the big picture. You want to get through this thing with no conviction, and DWI is not a DIY experience. So number four, get an attorney to quarterback the whole process. That's going to be the most important decision you make. Your license is not suspended immediately after a DWI in Austin. You are subject to suspension. So if you refuse to provide a breath or blood specimen, then you're subject to a suspension. If you consented, but you had alcohol in your system, then you're also going to be subject to a suspension. It typically takes about 40 days for that suspension to go into effect, but you have a due process right to request what's called an ALR, an administrative license revocation hearing. And by putting that request in, it pauses everything. And DPS can't suspend your driving privileges until they give you that hearing. Now, the hearing has to be requested within 15 days. The hearing doesn't happen within 15 days of the date of your arrest, but it has to be requested. To be on the safe side, count day for day. Again, this is something that an attorney will be doing for you if they're experienced in DWI, and that's why it's important to have an attorney, because this is one of those complicated things that if anything's wrong, DPS will just say you messed it up and you don't get to have a hearing. So your license is not suspended after you're arrested for DWI, but it is subject to suspension. And there are some things that you can do to prevent that suspension from immediately going into effect. Your first court date after a DWI arrest in Austin is not going to be a big deal. Nothing serious is going to be decided. You're not going to have to answer questions from anybody or tell your side of the story. It is a low stress deal. Don't be stressed about it. It's really kind of a perfunctory deal. You're showing up, you're availing yourself to the court. One of your bond conditions is that you have to come to court when you have court scheduled. And so you're going to be there, you're going to be on time, and it's really going to be an opportunity for your attorney or attorneys to confer with the prosecutors and see where they are in the process of getting all the evidence turned over. You know, your attorneys, if they're taking a thorough approach, should be requesting audio, video, reports, IA files, officer history, anything that could help you leverage the facts of your case to get to a better place. And the law says that the prosecutors have to turn that stuff over, but it doesn't say that they have to do it in a hurry. And the government's slow in everything that they do, and it's no different in a courtroom. So your first court date is a low stress deal. Don't be stressed about it. It's just an opportunity to kind of see where things are, and it's likely going to be the first of a handful of appearances that you make in court during the pendency of your DWI. The penalties for DWI in Austin, Texas are serious. First offense, you're looking at up to a year in jail if your BAC is a 0.15 or higher. If it's a 0.14 or below, or in the unlikely event that they don't have a BAC for you, that happens every now and then you're still looking at a maximum of 6 months. And this is for first-time offenders, so it's not like, you know, they're only doing this if people have serious criminal history. That's just the law across Texas, but it's enforced here in Austin. If you have a subsequent DWI case that you're dealing with, that means that you're dealing with a DWI case now, but you've got a conviction from a few years ago or a really long time ago, then you're definitely looking at up to a year in jail. And you're also looking at other things. You know, fines are in the thousands of dollars, driver's license a bit. DWIs are dismissed every day in courtrooms across Texas. Austin's no different. So you've got a chance to beat your DWI. Hope is alive. Let's keep hope alive. Now, how does a DWI get dismissed? You know, here in Austin, police officers are going to have video, audio, reports. Typically, they're going to have a BAC. All of this evidence has to be analyzed, and your defense team needs to have a strategy with what to look for and how to challenge that evidence. And that's how a DWI can be dismissed. You can't get a dismissal because you come in dressed very nice and say you're really sorry and you've never had a ticket and you won't do it again. That's not going to get you there. But working through your defense attorneys to try to find something where there wasn't probable cause, or there was an issue with the officer's judgment, or there was an issue with the traffic stop, or the person who tested your forensic analysis has had some type of an internal problem, and they've gotten in trouble for not following the rules. Those are the types of things that you can look for, and if those things line up, because DWI arrests are warrantless arrests based on probable cause, if something there lines up, then you can get a dismissal. It happens. Hope is alive. A DWI charge in Austin stays on your record forever if you don't do anything about it. I mean, it's permanent, and it is a permanent part of your criminal record. It's going to show up on every background check forever, even if it's dismissed. Common misconception, one of the biggest questions that we get all the time is, oh, I thought this was going to fall off my record after 7 years. Not true. So two things are in play anytime you're thinking about your record with any criminal charge, but particularly a DWI. Number one, the arrest, and then number two, the disposition, which is the result. Was it dismissed? Was it deferred adjudication and then dismissed? Was it a conviction but you did probation? Was it a conviction but you were incarcerated? It's going to be one of those things, right? And so you have to identify whichever one of those things it is. Does that put you in a position of eligibility to expunge your record? It may or it may not. It might put you in a position of eligibility to seal your record. But unless you expunge your record or seal your record, then there's always going to be that record of the arrest and what happened in court. Now, not everybody's eligible to do either of those things, but it's important, really important, maybe one of the most important things to think about when you're finalizing your DWI case. How is this going to affect my record and my eligibility to clean it up long term?